Thanks for watching. We are continuing our Position 360 series. We've gone through quite a few positions, and we're going to continue today with tight ends. We've got Houston Burnett from Shaking the Southland joining us. Houston, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, man. Happy to be here.
So if you've seen these, you know how I like to do them. We start with a review of last year, talk about the changes, and then we kind of dive into a preview. And for folks watching this live, if you leave comments, we'll kind of take this conversation where you want, whether it's other positions of football, basketball, baseball, whatever it may be, Clemson related. But Houston, I wanted to start off. This is going to kind of be the Jake Brenningstool show, just like the tight end room is.
Yeah.
So he was good last year. He had 498 receiving yards, as third on the team. At 6'6", he's a good red zone threat. He led all Clemson pass catchers with 5 receiving touchdowns, but he was very inconsistent. Before I dive into that, maybe some of your high-level thoughts on Brenningstool last year.
Yeah, he was probably, I'd argue, the most consistent pass catcher on the team last year, given how up and down the offense was. Jake Brenningstool was the one that was making most of the catches. 850 yards. That's a pretty good bit for a tight end there. But like you said, he had his moments where he might not squeeze a ball, or I remember the fumble against Syracuse, or especially with his blocking. It's not like this thing. He's definitely a tight end prospect for the NFL for the upper level. I think that getting the little minutia things down that will take him from a good prospect to a great prospect is what we're looking for this year. And I think that starts a little bit with some of his blocking, to be frank.
Yeah. So let me give some numbers on the blocking, because that was going to be one of the big criticisms that I was also going to share. So he was, we'll start with the receiving because it sort of ties together. So he was, he finished 8th in PFF grade, despite being 3rd in receiving yards in the ACC. And this was because of the blocking, as you mentioned, especially run blocking. His run blocking PFF grade, 45.4, which was 21st out of the 25 eligible ACC tight ends. So to say mediocre would be putting a little sugar on that, right? Like, it was bad. And that's why I say Jennings played a big role, because he was the guy they could trust to block. So I don't know that you could project improvement in blocking. I don't know how you guess that, but to me, that has to be like job number 1. He has to get better there.
Yeah, I'd agree. And you kind of look at the bodies behind him, not to steal thunder or anything. It's kind of the opposite. Maybe not necessarily with Josh Sapp. I think Josh Sapp, we'll talk about a little further, has kind of come in of his own as a good little hybrid of he blocks well enough. He's getting more confident in pass catching. He's becoming more of a threat, and he's someone that could be reliable later on. And then you have Olsen Pat Henry, who got more reps than kind of the others on the staff, other than maybe Sage Ennis. And his deal is he might be a better blocker from what I might be able to tell, but everyone's going to remember the drops that he has when he's got, an ocean of green grass between him and the end zone. And you can't have that as a tight end as well. I know that people want to harp on both Cade and the wide receivers and the offense as a whole, but tight ends played a part in dropping some pretty key passes last year as well.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. You talk about the offensive line struggles, but it was Phil Maffa who had the biggest missed block of the season against Florida State. Talk about drops, and some of them were the tight end. So yes, the compliments and the blame, it's not as clean cut as the blocking's not good, so it's all the offensive line, or there's too many drops, it's all the receivers. It's all a little mixed up there, and you certainly hit on some of that. You talked about Josh Sapp. He had a great spring game, 60 receiving yards in the spring game. I think and we'll circle back and talk more about Brenningstool, but as we're diving into the depth a little bit, I think Josh Sapp is the clear number 2. Is that as obvious as I think it is, or is there a real competition there?
Yeah, and this is, I'm assuming that, with Christian Bentancur coming in, I'm assuming I'm pronouncing his name right. So. He's just come in, so he's going to have to gain weight. He's going to have to learn. So maybe he comes in and just kills and takes a clear number 2. But as of what stands right now, Josh Sapp seems to have come in of his own. He's worked hard. He's a big body. He seems to be really athletic, and he is a clear number 2 where if Brenning still needed a blow, or if there's a time frame where he's out of the game or something like that, we don't want that. But it's building confidence in him that he could actually be a threat, which is kind of funny when you think about his recruitment versus Brenningstool. Brenningstool was this high 4-star. Everybody was happy about it. Sapp was kind of viewed as like, nepotism. Why are we taking
legacy take?
And a lot of times, there's a lot of cases where when we take these players, they pan out to be pretty good. Like, he's worked his tail off to be where he's at, and I think Josh Sapp is the clear number 2 as of today.
Yeah, you reminded me of whenever you point to recruiting rankings, there's always someone that says, "But Hunter Renfrow," and I like to make the comparison to life insurance. Sometimes the old lady who eats bonbons and smokes her whole life lives to 100. It happens, but it's the exception, not the rule. And if Josh Sapp can be that exception of a lower rated guy who's a star, I'm all for it, right?
I agree.
So let's circle back. Let's talk a little bit more about Jake Brenningstool. So he finished with 498 receiving yards on the year. The single season record is actually pretty recent, 2016. Jordan Leggett at 736 with 7 touchdowns. I tend to think he has a chance to challenge it. I just don't know if the quarterback play and the offensive line play will allow it. But he just needs to be more consistent, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot at play with him being able to reach that. If Cade, I think part of this is, you think back to those 2016 teams, especially, because getting over the hump and getting to where the offense was effective in multiple facets, you had some highly rated guys come in there that may or may not, when you look back at that team, been the most productive, that at least created an issue that someone had to take a look at. And part of the reason why people like Mike Williams and Jordan Leggett were able to thrive is you had someone like Deion Kane who could just, hey, buddy, go run a straight line. And if that takes the top off the defense, somebody's going to be open. So you have Deshaun able to pick you apart by being able to go right where that spot is, and Jordan Leggett's right there. And this is a big if TJ Moore or Bryant Westco is that, I don't think people realize how big of an advantage that gives us again, because you're not just talking about numbers going up for these 2 freshmen. You might be talking about numbers going up for Jake Brenningstool, Antonio Williams, Adam Randall. If he comes in of his own, he seems to be picking up steam a little bit more as time goes on. So it's there. I just think it's getting a flow. If you can create a matchup issue with one of these freshmen and you get Cade comfortable being able to do that, absolutely he can challenge for it. It's just kind of getting that coming together.
Yeah. So one thing that really stood out to me about Brenningstool, and you kind of mentioned that he was, he was third on, it was Tyler Brown, Bo Collins, and him. So in a sense, he was one of the main guys. But it was interesting to me how inconsistent that was, because he had some great games. Miami and NC State, which coincidentally were both losses. He had 5 catches, 126 yards, and 2 touchdowns in one game, 8 catches, 93 yards in another. He also had 9 catches for 91 yards in the Gator Bowl against Kentucky. Other games like Duke, he had 1 catch for 10 yards, and then South Carolina, which they won, but no thanks to the offense, he had 1 catch for 3 yards. So I don't expect him to have 80 yards a game per se, but the total disappearing act in some games for a player who's not really much of a blocker is almost weird to me.
Yeah. Now, the 2 things about both of those games that I'll lay out as caveats. Duke was a strange game. You had 3 instances in plus territory, not just plus territory, plus 5 into the end zone, where 17 points were going to be given to you and you just couldn't score. And so you vanish. You have issues where Cade's kind of figuring out doing this new offense in the first game. You have Shipley just, ball going right into another guy's hands, basically. So it was just a strange game. And I think everybody's kind of given that one game where it's like, he didn't really have a great game. With South Carolina, I look at it as once Clemson got up by 9, it's why take a risk when we're suffocating you on defense. We could, You know, we might be able to tinker around, but they had a talented enough secondary to be able to cover, probably because they had a good secondary play and coverage against Brenningstool. So why take the risk as far as that goes? Just pound them and pound them and pound them and suffocate them to death. And that's how it played out. So those two games are kind of odd. Whereas you look at the other 10, 11 games, and he's been pretty consistent in the yardage that he gets. And when he's on, he's on. He's very, very good.
Yeah, the end of the Kentucky game is one drive, but maybe I'm being an optimist when I try to take as much as I possibly can out of that final game-winning drive. But to see the way that Brenningstool and Antonio Williams were so critical on the game-winning drive, that to me is the recipe. And so to see it at least, it took all year literally to the very, very literal last drive. But to me, that's when Clemson's offense looked like this is a legit Garrett Riley offense and go in. So I guess kind of put a wrap on tight ends, and then we can kind of take this conversation wherever folks listening live or wherever kind of we want to go. But I think the tight end room has a chance to be a major contributor for the offense. But I don't think it's a given. I really think Brenningstool needs to take a step. Maybe it seems like we disagree a little bit on the receiving consistency, but certainly on becoming a better blocker. Yeah. I think if he could do that, that helps the run game, which helps the pass game, which helps him get more receiving yards. It's all connected.
And if you think about this as well, as far as the other tight ends go, Josh Sapp has come into his own. So you may not have Sage Ennis out there, but Sage Ennis didn't really contribute as much as a pass catcher. I think he had one big catch against Notre Dame, and not really much more. Josh Sapp can catch. So you have another weapon out there. So if you're in a 22 package, two double tight with two wide receivers, whatever, you can sneak that out there, and he's a possibility as far as the target goes. It's a big deal if he matures. And then with Olsen Pat Henry, if he just relaxes and catches the ball, I mean, anytime that he's been open, you think back to South Carolina game, spring game, those are 20-yard, 30-yard passes because just nobody's there. And you got to be able to haul those ends, because you think about that drive. I want to say that was the one that ended with a field goal. If Clemson's able to cash that in, and now it's a 2-touchdown game versus just 9 points, kind of a different feel, and maybe that score goes up a little bit more, but you just got to be able to clean up. It's not as drastic as a lot of people would think. It's just cleaning up things and being able to move forward. Now, blocking is a different animal. I agree with you there, but you also have some bigger bodies, Benton Kerr, Marcus Dixon, Olsen Pat Henry, Josh Sapp, that can do that. I think part of that is framed for Brenningstool, but you also have guys in there that I feel confident are going to be better as far as the blocking packages go.
Yeah, and you know what? Before we wrap on tight end, there's a few things we didn't hit on, and I want to also address John's question here. So we skimmed over Sage Ennis. He is the guy departing. And it's kind of interesting that he transfers out to go to Florida A&M, which is an interesting fit. And then from there, he pivots and transfers again as soon as Willie Simmons, the coach, Clemson grad, coach of Florida A&M, he goes, I believe, to Duke to be an assistant. So then Sage Ennis goes to Virginia for another former Clemson player and Clemson assistant. So a lot of interesting Clemson connections. But anyway, all that to say, he's the only guy they lose. They replace him with Christian Bettenker. And so that's a long way for me to get to John's question to say, who's the most likely second pass catcher and or blocking kind of contributor, tight end? I still think it's Josh Sapp. But if we're talking beyond that, you were talking about Dixon and Olsen Pat Henry. Maybe it's kind of like the new guy is easy to get excited for. But I'm excited about Christian Bettenker. I think it'll take a while at that position, but maybe end of the year he's a guy who could emerge. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's the type of guy that he's built. He's not as, and granted, hasn't stepped foot on a college field yet. So it's very hard to project just how he's going to be. But he's a very big body. 6'6", 6'7", something like that. Big guy.
6'5", 235.
6'5", 235. So I was off a little bit. Sorry, fudging.
Still, nevertheless, big guy.
Big guy. I don't think he's quite as mobile or fluid as like a Jordan Leggett would be, and he's definitely already kind of bulkier, what I would think, than what Brenningstool, him coming in and ends up as a product.
Yeah.
He's probably more akin to, say, somebody. What we're hoping is probably a better pass catching version than Davis Allen. Like, I think Davis Allen was your meat and potatoes. Like, he may not have been this dynamic Gronk like matchup issue, but he was always the one that if he's out there, he's going to catch the ball, and he's a load to bring down. You're going to have a problem dealing with that. And I think that's what made him very good as a tight end. He may not have been the greatest ever to play tight end at Clemson, but he's a daggone problem to have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what Bettenker brings. 6'5", 235. He split out wide a lot in high school, so we'll see how ready he is to be an inline blocker. But he finished with 51 touchdowns across his high school career, which is pretty wild. So definitely excited about him. Just a question how quick he can contribute. I know tight end's a complicated position. So let's pivot here. Let's stop for a second. I want to shout out Ready Vets, who is the sponsor of this channel. If you live in the upstate and you're a pet owner, if you need immediate walk-in care and your veterinary office is closed or can't take you, just save Ready Vets in your phone. If you ever need them, they're there 7 days a week to help you out. Houston, let's pivot here. You kind of mentioned the wide receiver room. Two freshmen, Bryant Wesco, TJ Moore coming in. Are those the guys you're keeping an eye on? Do you think there's other players who are going to, there's several guys coming back from injury? Like, what if this wide receiver room is not better? This Clemson offense isn't going to be that good. I'm just going to say that straightforward. Well, so what's going to be the thing?
I think at some point or another, it's got to be right. Maybe not. I might be wrong, and it's all terrible. But at the same time, for the last 3 years, you've had guys that can play ball. Antonio Williams, Tyler Brown, very good. I think that through all this, there's a couple of wide receivers that are like guys that would flourish if there was a threat downfield, like Adam Randall. Adam Randall is a big body, similar akin to what a Mike Williams would be, but Mike Williams wasn't the one that was necessarily the speed demon of the group. He had a Deion Kane. He had other guys that you had to keep an eye on because they were fast. So not being able to have that, it's kind of hard for him to take on that. So now you have a threat. You have somebody like TJ Moore who he's a problem to deal with. I think he's going to be a very good wide receiver. I think Bryant Wesco has already shown he's going to be a very good wide receiver. So you've already gotten issues as a defense having to deal with those two. So if you have to take account of those two on the field, if they are on the field at the same time, that's going to leave somebody who is a very good wide receiver open. I think Antonio Williams could have a monster year this year. I think somebody like Adam, I'm going to keep thinking that Adam Randall, he hasn't shown anything like falling off. He's gotten better, but I just think he needs to make that one. He needs to have that one yin to yang moment where he's like, oh, I'm free to do whatever now. I can just take over a game, because you're either going to have to make a choice to cover Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore or me. And the matchup you got me on, I'm going to carry this all day. So there's guys that, they just need that opportunity to do so, whether it's Brown, Antonio Williams, Adam Randall, even somebody maybe like, I don't think Stellato is necessarily a dynamic threat to go downfield, but I think being able to create opportunities where he's not catching the ball between two guys and having to just get it away and move from there, creating space. I think that's going to go a long way, and it's going to go a long way for giving confidence to Cade, because if he can go deep with it, if he's got somebody that's like, oh yeah, I can beat a guy and get separation, just get the ball to me. That's what we've been lacking. I know that we haven't pushed the ball, or I shouldn't say we. Clemson has not pushed the ball. Clemson has not pushed the ball well last 3 years. Some of that's been quarterback play, some of that's been O-line, but you also really haven't had a threat downfield. Justin Ross could have been, and I feel really bad because I think part of like all this injury stuff is
he got like tentative at the end.
Yeah, it was he got tentative, and you can't blame the guy. Like,
it's a neck injury.
It's a neck injury, so that's going to be something that's problematic. EJ Williams was supposed to be the next guy, and just nothing materialized. And then I've kind of viewed Bo Collins in the same lens as what Adam Randall is. Bo Collins needed a threat on the other side of him to really flourish. He wasn't the downfield threat, and it just never happened. And so I think now you have
let me jump in there because I think that's a great point. I think Bo Collins was not a bad receiver, but Clemson was trying to treat him like the number one alpha receiver.
Yeah.
And we'll see what Notre Dame does with him, but I just don't think he can fill that role. He's an so blocker. He has okay speed. He has okay hands. Like, he's a good college player, but he's not. If he's your number one, you've got a problem, and that's how Clemson tried to use him. And he would disappear at times, despite them trying to go to him.
Yeah.
I love Stellato, but more of like elite hands guy than a burner downfield.
Yeah, I think Stellato is more or less. I wouldn't compare him to like a Renfro or even like Cole Turner can be an effective guy if you're going to give him the ball like 2 or 3 times a game, right? You sneak him on the field, do a little pop pass or whatever. He's fast enough where you can get 15 yards. Cool. But with Stellato is more or less, if you give him space, he's more akin to like Adam Humphries, right? I think he's a bigger body version of that. He's probably more quick twitch than Adam Humphries was. Maybe not as laterally as good, but he's better.
He's a true slot guy, and he's got great hands. Yeah. Don't try to hit him with a fly route downfield, but use him for what he's supposed to be used for. And I feel like that's been kind of our issue. Like when Clemson moved Justin Ross to the slot, it's just you don't have the guys for the position, so you're moving people out of their strengths. And what I like about this room now is you have Tyler Brown, you have Troy Stellato. Those guys could be good slot players. You have Adam Randall, you have Wesco and Moore. Those could be outside guys. And then you have Antonio Williams, who could be a slot, but I think he could thrive in that kind of old school Sammy Watkins role where it's a little bit more versatile than that. So, these guys get hurt a lot. They're going to have to prove they can stay healthy, but I'm starting to believe in this room. And then Cole Turner, you mentioned, give him 1 or 2 looks deep downfield, maybe an end around or something like that. I still like him as well.
Yeah, I think the room it's gonna get better, and especially as what we talk about with tight ends, you have more options, I think, than what you've had in the last couple of years. If you think about the 16 and 18 years, you had more than just Jordan Leggett and more than just Davis Allen. You had other guys that you were willing to. You had Braden Galloway. That was kind of the tweener in between there. He was athletic. He could have become a little bit more than I think a lot of people would have liked him to become, but he was still serviceable. He still could play well. And you had those options abounding in your tight end room. So when you got more options, it gives your confidence in your quarterback. If you're going to have to be dealing with a defense like Georgia, you don't have to just sit back in the pocket and hope to God somebody comes open. I think it's going to come together a little better. Not predicting a win or anything like that. I just think that as the year progresses, we're going to be like, oh, you know what? They have gotten better, and it does look good. How good? Don't know, but I think this year there's going to be a jump a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it was Braden Galloway was suspended. What was that for 2019? Because I remember he came back and played a little bit against LSU. Is that right?
Yeah, he was suspended. It wasn't the
Osterine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Osterine stuff. Now I remember that. That stunted him a little bit because he played in 2020. And did he finish out 2021 or did he leave? He left after 2020. I think
2021 was the year that we lost to Pittsburgh and he was very ineffective that year. I'll always wonder if he hadn't gotten so into the NIL TikTok stuff that he blew up on if he could have been a different player on the football field. But to his credit, he was very successful with that. So it's hard to criticize him too much. Last thing to hit on, and I'll check if there's any comments. We do have a couple comments. John, again, was saying that Stellato was pretty quick last year, another year of recovery. He might be a burner. I still think he's an elite hands guy. And I want to call out, I felt like Cade Klubnik missed him running wide open more than any receiver I've ever seen on a Clemson. He had a lot of opportunities that he just didn't see. We got a couple of good questions here. This is a fun one. Do we believe that Cade Klubnik will have a better season than DJ for Florida State? I'm gonna let you jump on that one.
All right. I've been waiting for this question to be asked. I've been waiting to be on air for this. So I know that as everybody thinks of DJ in a Clemson sense, he's a bit of a pariah, right? But if you look statistically from year to year in his first year as a full-time starter versus year 2 and his second year as a full-time starter, it doesn't feel like there was a ton of improvement, right? You lost to Notre Dame, you got blown out. South Carolina loss was just, you could not accept that. But just from a number standpoint, he went from 9 touchdowns his sophomore year to 22 his next year.
That is DJ Young you're talking about.
Yeah, DJ went from 9 to 22. So that's almost a 150% jump in production just off that. Now, that's not great, but he improved from year 1 to year 2. And then interception-wise, may not seem like it, he went from 10 interceptions his sophomore year to 7 his junior year. Now, he did get taken out against Syracuse, the whole 9 yards. There's a lot to unpack there, but he improved. And so you put Cade at a starting point of 19-9. It's 19 touchdowns passing, 9 interceptions. That's not really, you look at numbers from first-time starters, any other program in the country, people are going to go, that's serviceable, he's okay. He had a lot of pretty good numbers compared to other quarterbacks. It's just, you have some issues with the line, drops, everything, turnovers were horrible, and so it puts him in a different light. But if you think about it, even if he had a 50% jump next year, so half as good as it was, you're looking between 28 and 29 touchdowns next year, which I think we can both agree, if he threw for 29 touchdowns last year, the season itself probably is taking a different light than what it was. And so that's something that I want to leave people with is like, all right, if he makes a jump, even if it's just playing halfway better, the season might look a lot different than people are expecting, especially if the defense keeps up what they're doing. If the wide receiving core kind of melds together, if he makes a jump, I'm not going to say he's going to be Trevor or Deshaun or anything, but he's going to be a lot better than people think. So all that to answer this question, I think Cade's going to end up having a better season than DJ for FSU, because here's the other thing. You look at DJ's numbers from year 3 at Clemson to year 4, numbers are pretty much identical. No matter how you want to slice it, he was playing in an offense that was able to mask his ineffectiveness at Clemson because they had a very stellar run game and a running back that is now at Miami playing for the Hurricanes. I think he went from throwing for 22 to 21 touchdowns at Oregon State, had the same amount of interceptions. Right. And so he might do that again at Florida State, but again, you're putting the onus back on him rather than a stellar offensive line and running back. And if you watch their spring game, he looked the exact same. Like, there's just no other way to put it. And that's my concern if I'm Florida State, is you're losing Cedric Benson and replacing him with high talent potential, and you're losing guys like Johnny Wilson and you're losing Keon Coleman and replacing them with high talent potential. But how much potential do you have when you have a quarterback that has confidence issues and could be throwing it into the dirt, throwing it 6 rows into the stands, or throwing it to the other team? You don't know what's going to happen when he looks down the field. That's why I'm going to tend to say Cade's going to have a better season.
So I think I agree. Let me try to unpack this too. We can end on this one. This is a great question. Thank you to the commenter who dropped this in. So I love your point about the progression, and I think this is something scouts will talk about. Like, how much more growth does DJ have left? This is year 5, right? So he's gotten 4 years in college, weight rooms. He's gotten 4 years to learn how this works, right, and improve his game. And like you said, last year he went from in 2022 with Clemson, 62% completion. It actually went down to 57, despite throwing fewer attempts because they can lean on the run game more. I do think that that offense suited him better at Oregon State, where it's a little more play action and maybe even pro style. But you kind of just saw this is what he is. I watched him. He was smart. He makes better decisions than Cade, at least last year did. But there's just the tools aren't the same. He doesn't have the speed, the zip, the accuracy, especially. I think that Cade's a much more accurate thrower. And to your point, Cade, we don't have a ton of growth yet, but I think you expect, like you said, the jump, right? And Cade wasn't. There was moments where he made dumb decisions, Florida State at the end, passed it when he should have handed it off. Miami, where he ran it instead of the handoff, which was literally the call. You clean a couple of those up, the whole season looks different. And I believe part of that maybe is just immaturity, and he's got to learn. But I wonder if he felt like he couldn't trust his teammates. If he hands it off, is Shipley going to fumble it? Is the offensive line going to block? Because Shipley fumbled it a lot, and the offensive line failed to block a lot. And if he makes a certain pass, are they just going to drop it? Because they did that a lot too. So I wonder if it's kind of that virtuous cycles of other players making plays. They trust them.
If you think about it from a sense of Cade's numbers, how different they would look if say, for instance, Maffa picks up that block. If you watch that play, Bo's starting to come open across the field. He hits that, could be a touchdown as far as that goes. Or thinking about
even if it's not, Clemson wins.
Yeah, even if it's not, it's a first down. You're running the clock. You're likely going to be able to put that game on ice if you score there. The Duke game, all those turnovers, the outcome of that game goes from a blowout to probably a Clemson win if you're able to not turn the ball over like you did in that game. Same with Miami. If Will Shipley hangs on to the ball going into the end zone, Clemson beats Miami. End of story. So there is trepidation for him in that way. And maybe now he's got a little bit more trust. It's just kind of, you got to bring it all together. I think it's going to be a fresh start this year. It's good. I think there's potential for Cade to grow. Whereas DJ, how much growth are we talking about here?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're on the same page here. Let's leave it at that. Houston, I appreciate you joining. Thanks for doing this.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. And as always, go Tigers.